All right, today I wanted to talk about The Bear, which is a cooking show starring the guy from Shameless and a few other people that you probably know and have seen from there. And the story takes place in a restaurant in Chicago. And from the get-go, from the beginning of the show, we are immediately thrown into the middle of this. This is kind of a story that begins with the chaotic day of our main character, Carmen, or Carmy, who's trying to run this restaurant. This is a beef restaurant, and what this does when you immediately begin a story in the middle of this, you are pulling the audience in because they really want to know what's going on. Because what you have is you have a whole lot of things going on about how you have, this is not the way. You have all these dialogue parts, and what you're doing is you're giving the audience these bits and pieces of it and letting them piece it together. And the nice thing about this is that it gets the audience thinking, it challenges them, they want to figure out what's going on, they're paying attention to these little dialogue snippets, like, what would it be, when Carmy and Richie are fighting, he'll say, why didn't he leave it with you? Why didn't he leave the restaurant with you? Bam. And so we're immediately understanding something. Okay, so Michael owned the restaurant. This is exposition. This is what you're trying to get across to the audience, and in a way that is productive, as you never want to have a monologue where it's like, once upon a time there was a gentleman named Michael who opened a restaurant in Chicago. You don't want that. Michael had the restaurant, he was close with Richie, but then he left the restaurant with Carmy. And this also does great because it asks a question. Why did Michael leave? Why did he leave the restaurant to Carmy? What's going on? We're jumping into the middle of all of this. And this is one thing that the show does really well, and this is what I think it kind of garners a lot of love and intense feeling, is because the show is crazy intense. Like, this is not a show that you'd almost, this is something like ER nurses or, people who love high intensity, the octane, that movie genre that they talked about, the high octane ones. Because what the story does is you'll have a scene and it'll say, okay, so he's trying to change this up, and you'll have a bunch of little different dialogue things. And what the bear does is, let's say Carmen's trying to change up the menu. He's trying to change the menu at this restaurant. So what did he do? He buys different mayonnaise. And this normally would just be a thing. They're like, you bought different mayonnaise. Nope. Richie comes in and says, you bought the wrong mayonnaise. Why are you doing this? What is wrong with you? Tina says, you took my pot. You took her pot. She's got that. She had a pot that's hers. Everybody knows it's hers for some reason. You took it. Carmy has an issue because the knives are all dull. He's trying to chop veggies. He's trying to chop tomatoes. He's trying to chop onions. He's trying to do all this different stuff, and it's not working. It's not going the correct way. And this is what's going on. Is normally you'd have, point A, he wants to change the menu, and point B is down here is the menu is equal changed. But what the bear does is every single moment of this is conflict. Every single thing is conflict as we're weaving in and out of these scenes. Everything is conflict. Everything is tension. There is no simple moment. The other thing it does is there are no breaks. There are absolutely nothing at all. Because what the show is doing is it's trying to pull you in with this intensity to let you piece it together, and you're kind of slowly beginning to get an understanding. You're kind of slowly getting your bearings, and you're getting this while all the characters are largely screaming at each other. They're chopping onions over here. They've got a pot, soup that's boiling, and there's fire underneath. And then there's this other pot, which Carmen doesn't realize is hot, and he grabs it and burns his hand. You have all of this stuff going on. And what it does is it means that your first episode is just absolutely explosively, you want to know what's going on. And this is another thing, though, that you're doing to the audience when you have this tension moments, when you have these fights, when you have these screaming matches. One, there's going to be a lot of people who like the reality of it. They see it as real. This is something where instead of people being nice together and working together or anything like that, what it is you have a lot of people, and this is the other thing that's interesting, is there's not really necessarily any bad guys. And this is another aspect that the only real bad guy is that one dude who's played by Joel McHale that I saw in one of the later episodes, who is Jeff from Community. I know that one. And what you've got here is there's not really necessarily any bad guys, which adds a really interesting dynamic to the show, because normally what it is you'll have all the characters will be fighting and everything like that, and there'll be a villain and they'll rally together and put aside their differences to fight against it. And this is not real. This is the reason why people love to have rivals. They love to have villains, because you get to define yourself based on the villain. There's a very clear delineation. So this is what the villain wants. So long as I'm over here on this side, I'm good. In real life, we don't have that. We don't have that. And you don't really have bad guys. You just have dicks, usually, you run into periodically throughout your life. And then you will have villains periodically. But it is generally, they're always a lot more disappointing than they are in the show. There is this whole aspect of, you're defining yourself against this, and it kind of gives you a break, because there's a reason you can explain all the reason why all this stuff is happening. In that one James Bond movie, I'm the architect of all of your misfortune. But in this show, there are no villains. Like, Richie is screaming at him, but you kind of understand why, because he bought the wrong mayonnaise. You don't ruin it. We had a system. It worked, Ever since you came here and we started changing everything, we started losing money. The system worked. We're going to lose our jobs. The restaurant, this is what Richie's going. Tina is the one who really did drive me nuts, but she eventually starts to come around. She's the closest thing to an evil villain, if you want to call it that, just because she's just stuck. She's just stuck. She can't get out of this. This is the way it is. This is the way it is. This is my pot that everybody knows. This is my pot. This is what I do. This is what that. This is that. All of this stuff is going on with it. And so what you have is this continually build tension between all of the characters. And this is a good aspect in terms of what you're doing. Again, because what it is you are pulling the audience in. From here, you are sucking them. They want to know more because they want relief. They want a break. And this is what you do in a story. Is usually what it is you'll have a moment where, okay, the character, and I've kind of drawn this out a few times. So what it is you'll have the character down here, and they are striving upward for something. And then this up here is the goal. This is the goal. This could be whatever it is, and you can break this down into big scenes and small scenes from here. And this is also the power level or competence. This is something that's really difficult. So like whatever it is, this could be a higher level. This could be Naruto trying to achieve, the Chunin exams, trying to level up from there. This could be Luke Skywalker trying to train under Yoda. This could be, any sort of villain trying to fight. Basically this is represents this journey upwards, represents all the obstacles, all the things that you'd have to do in order to achieve your goal, everything that's standing against you. And then usually what happens is you'll have this moment here right after you achieve the goal. And this is kind of the victory, the moment of victory. This is relief. This is when all the tension breaks. Is the girl, when you ask her, if you're trying to ask out a girl, this is all the stuff you have to go through to get to ask the girl. And if she says yes, this is kind of the relief. Or you can even make it relief about, no, she said no, but I asked her. I achieved what I was doing. I was so terrified, but I did it. I did this thing up here. And then there's this moment of relief, and then it kind of goes into, and it resets. Because, of course, the characters have to keep going up. And so there's this moment of relief here, but then it leads up into the next thing, and this could last a single scene or a single movie. This could be asking the girl out. This could be getting the girl, This is why so many times, after the end of the first movie, they'll get the girl, and in the beginning of the second movie, they'll immediately lose her. And it's just like, okay, starting all over again. And this is the reason why people don't like it, because they don't like starting down here because we're up here. But what the bear does is this whole scene right here, this is all gone. What it is you have one moment of conflict, and then another moment of conflict, and then another moment of conflict, And sometimes you'll have them going on simultaneously because maybe there's another piece of conflict up here. And what you're trying to do, you're trying to pay off the bills, you're trying to keep the lights on, you're trying to keep your employees paid, you're trying to keep the food coming in, you're trying to buy more food so you can sell more food to make more money to buy more food. You know, you have all of this different things. We're trying to change things up because the restaurant's not working. But when you change things up, because the restaurant's not working, stuff's going to start going to bad. And you have all these moments where you have all of this, and this just keeps going up and 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 up from here. You have this tension building from there. And this is what drives the show to be what it is. This is the reason why people love it or not. And this is one thing I wanted to talk about because I was talking about it with my brother, and he was saying, nope, my anxiety can't do it. And this is something where I think the show would run into it, is you will have these people who will watch this show, and they'll usually do, I would guess, one of two things. Is once you start a story, you need to know how it ends. Because what you're doing is when you start this dynamic, this is where all of the anxiety and the stress, all of this comes into play right here. And you need to see that relief by getting it up here. But there is nothing up here. It's just on to the next, on to the. So basically what you have to do is you might as well watch the whole season. You might as well just watch the whole thing of it. And this is something where it is very successful. This is what Your Honor does. In the last video I talked about this. But the problem with Your Honor is the characters are doing something immoral. There's kind of this duplicitous nature of it. This one, there are no villains. There are no real villains. It's just, they're just trying really hard and they're having a hard time succeeding. And all this anger and this explosive tension is just going out in all directions. It's not directed towards the villain because there's not really a villain. It's only like the only villain or antagonist, if you wanted to call it, would be like Carmy's demons or something like that. But there is no evil villain. You know, he gets help. His family's there for him. They're kind of trying to piece together their broken little family together because they understand that they have no one but each other. And this is something that really comes into play and that I really appreciate about the show. This is the reality of it. And I think this is the reason why people like the show in that regard, is because they see it as real. You know, there's no villains. There's no easy answer or easy explanation for why everything's going wrong. It just is. You're trying your hardest and you're still failing. Welcome to life. You know, that's what it is. And this is kind of this catharsis that people find in these stories from there. And so what you have to do is you either have to just watch the whole season because, man, you've got to get that relief, got to figure out what happens, got to know everything's going to be okay, and this is what drives it, or you stop because you can't handle it because the anxiety is just too much from there. And that's valid. I think it is. I think that's kind of the problem with some of these shows. That, you know, my wife, it drives her nuts, these types of shows. She just can't handle it. She's like, my life is too stressful. Or more, too stressful, maybe wrong. Stressful enough, shall we say. And why add more from there? And it's a valid point. But for people like me, you know, you're trying to find the next thing. You're trying to keep pushing and pushing and pushing from there. And this is what this show does really well, this anxiety. And the other thing that I didn't really talk too much about it is that Carmy, we like Carmy. He's a great guy. He's trying. We really like that. He's also competent. This is something that I've talked a little about. People don't really hate characters if they're good or bad. They hate them if they're competent versus incompetent, you know. And they also do hate them for being bad. But generally, it's the competency thing that's coming in there. And so Carmy's really, really trying. And you can see that he's built up this reputation. They understand he's a legit chef, and he can proving it because he's changing stuff. And sometimes he's able to cook. You know, this is the reason. There's a great moment where Tina is trying this food that Carmy's making, and she just looks and she's like, oh man, that's good. You know, you have this aspect where you're building towards these moments, because the nice thing is when you have two characters who like each other and they come together, it's kind of like, well, duh. It's more of a duh moment. But if you have two characters who hate each other, who despise each other, who are at odds, it's a much greater victory. And this is what the show really is thriving on, because there is no such thing. It's everything is immediately to 11 from here. And this is what it constantly is building toward. So yeah, I think I'm going to keep watching it. I'm enjoying it so far. And as long as I don't have too much anxiety from there, I think I'll enjoy it. So yeah, I think that covers it. I hope you guys enjoy this one. I'll see you in the next.